Before 2017, Maharashtra's real estate market was defined by unverified documents and untraceable funds. Today, that environment has been replaced by a structured, verified ecosystem. This is a breakdown of the regulatory framework governing that transition. I am Pavan Thakur of Tucker Property Consultancy. The Real Estate Regulation and Development Act, implemented in Maharashtra in May 2017, redistributed power in the sector by enforcing legal protections for buyers and defining strict liabilities for intermediaries. Maharera is a procedural mechanism designed to enforce information symmetry across the market. The regulatory system is built upon 5 foundational principles that dictate every rule and portal function. These are the 5 pillars: transparency, accountability, financial discipline, customer centricity, and compliance. These pillars function to bridge the trust gap through mandatory data disclosures. Accountability defines the roles of every stakeholder, while financial discipline regulates the flow of project capital. To understand how this works in practice, we must examine the specific obligations placed on both promoters and real estate agents. Adherence to these 5 pillars is the legal requirement for operating in Maharashtra's real estate sector. Compliance begins at Section 3. Any commercial or residential project exceeding 500 square meters or 8 apartments must be registered with the authority. The rule is absolute. A developer cannot advertise, market, or sell any unit without a valid Maharera registration number. To prevent the diversion of funds, the framework employs a system of financial ring fencing. 70% of all funds collected from buyers must be deposited into a separate escrow account, restricted solely to land and construction costs for that specific project. There is also a limit on initial capital collection. A promoter is barred from accepting more than 10% of the property cost as an advance payment. Access to the remaining 90% of the property cost is contingent upon the execution and formal registration of a written agreement for sale. Beyond the sale, Section 15 defines the promoter's ongoing liability through the defect liability clause. For 5 years after the date of possession, promoters are responsible for rectifying any structural defects or poor workmanship without additional charge to the buyer. These rules ensure a promoter's access to capital is tied directly to the verified physical progress of the project. Section 9 extends this regulatory reach to the intermediary, formalizing the real estate agent as a legally liable entity. Operating legally requires a registration fee, 10,000 rupees for individual agents and 100,000 rupees for organizations. This registration is valid for 5 years and requires a formal renewal process. This panel defines the daily professional obligations for agents, including the prominent display of credentials and the requirement to quote registration numbers on all marketing materials. The framework also mandates independent due diligence. Agents are expected to verify project details through the official portal rather than relying on developer marketing. This checklist details the required verifications: checking for active project status, reviewing legal title reports for encumbrances, and confirming the status of commencement certificates. Facilitating the sale of unregistered projects or providing misleading information results in compounding financial penalties. These fines begin at 10,000 rupees per day of default and can reach up to 5% of the total property cost. Under Maharera, an agent is held to a standard of strict liability. Failing to perform the required due diligence carries the same severe financial penalties as providing deliberate misinformation. The Maharera web portal serves as the primary interface for this entire regulatory framework. It is the site where promoters are legally required to provide continuous public updates. Every 3 months, the public can view updated data on booked inventory, parking allocations, and construction status. Agents and investors use the portal's search functions to verify project registrations and the status of individual agents. The database also tracks project-wise litigations and adjudications through the search rulings and judgments section. Reviewing these records ensures that a transaction does not involve a legally disputed or stalled asset. The portal is an enforcement tool that uses transparency to ensure that the rules of the Act are being followed. The Maharera framework is a system that replaces unverified claims with a process of continuous verification. A compliant transaction requires that commencement certificates and title reports from the promoter are verified against the agent's credentials, resulting in a verified data stream for the buyer. There is one final technical requirement to close a transaction safely: Section 194IA of the Income Tax Act. For any property transaction exceeding 50 lakhs, the law triggers a tax deducted at source, or TDS, requirement. It is the buyer's legal responsibility, not the seller's, to deduct 1% of the property value during the payment process. This 1% deduction must be submitted to the government using Form 26QB. Professional agents must guide their clients through this step, as failure to comply leaves the buyer liable for tax penalties. Operating in this market requires adherence to these combined regulations. Ignorance of the RERA Act, the portal, or the tax code is not a valid legal defense. This report was detailed, collected, created, and presented by Pawan Thakur of Thakur Property Consultancy. For professional guidance, contact 900-435-2787.